Thank you very much. I'd like to start with an apology to Johnny. I should have turned up with a tablet instead of my bit of paper, so I'm definitely below the Johnny line, as it were, but next time I'll try to do better. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be able to give this vote of thanks for Kevin this evening. I'd like to start by personally thanking him for a fantastic lecture, and he's done what he's always done right throughout his career. He's demonstrated how important it is to create a really good knowledge of what's happening in the ground. And it takes me back to one particular meeting I remember being in with Kevin. And we work in a very commercial world where maybe we don't always get to do all the things that we want to do as geologists and geotechnical engineers. And sometimes our clients will ask, why do we need to do all that ground investigation? Do we really need to create that complex model? And we were being asked questions like that in a particular meeting one day, and I thought to myself, what I want to say to the client is, listen guys, if you don't do this properly, your converter station is going to end up slightly closer to the sea than you originally planned it to be. But I didn't say that. I said to Kevin, what do you think? And Kevin said, Mr. Client, given the potential ground conditions that we might encounter on this site, it's vitally important that we do a detailed and thorough ground investigation, and we then use that data to create a comprehensive ground model. We'll then use that, once we've interpreted it, to de-risk and mitigate some of the not insignificant risks on this site, and then ultimately create significant value for the project as a whole. And I said, wow. And the client said, when can you start? So I remember that vividly, Kevin, but I'll just go back a few years. I'll not take too much time. I know that you've all got a meal to have and drinks to have, but I first came across the name Kevin Privet when I was at Bristol University, and I'm delighted that Jeremy Hucker is here as well, because Jeremy and I sat in the third year of Brian Hawkins' applied geology class, and I make these comments against the backdrop of great amount of affection for Brian and Kevin. But Brian used to spend a lot of his time bemoaning the quality of his PhD students. However, there was one character who was different. There was one that stood head and shoulders above any other PhD student that had ever been with Brian, and that was Kevin Privet. Kevin Privet was the best PhD student I ever had, he used to say repeatedly. Kevin was brilliant. Kevin and I did this field trip together. Kevin and I did this site visit together. We were sick of hearing it. And all this from a man who said that the best PhD students succeeded despite their PhD supervisor rather than because of them. So by the time I first got to hear Kevin speak, he'd almost gained mythical status in my mind at least. And I was really interested in this character because I was thinking of doing a PhD myself. And at an early stage, I thought to myself, if I can ever get half as good as Kevin Privet, then I'll have had a great career. So by the time I got to hear him speak at the Glossop in London, he was speaking on, I think it was actually on using chalk for earthworks, if I remember correctly. And he gave a fantastic lecture that day. I remember thinking to myself, Hawkins was right, this guy does know what he's talking about. But he had something that I noticed was a real style of presenting and an easy way about him. And after the lecture, I had a chat with him, and I couldn't get over how friendly and affable he was and approachable. And that was a great asset of Kevin's right throughout his whole career. He's been able to strike a balance between working in consultancy and in academia. And if you look at his CV, it includes stints at Golder, Rust, and SRK, as Matt has mentioned earlier on. I would say that it's highly likely that in most corners of the globe, there's an engineering geologist or a geotechnical engineer that's been taught or mentored or advised or had his or her report corrected by Kevin at some point in their career. Now, I've worked with a number of talented geologists and engineers over the years, and I've often thought, when they've retired, wouldn't it be great if you could just shove a USB stick into them and download all the... There's a challenge for you, Johnny. Work that one out. If you could download all that knowledge and experience that the likes of Kevin has. But in Kevin's case, you don't need to do it because he has kindly and generously downloaded so much of his expertise into generations for the future. So that's a fantastic thing. Often in these situations, it's easy to forget that the person's better half. And in this case, Debbie, who's always been by Kevin's side. I'm sure you've listened to a lot of lectures. You've maybe even written some of them in the past. So thank you. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Kevin not only for his fantastic Glossop lecture, but also for his lifetime's contribution to engineering geology.